Today, YouTuber TIK released a quite frankly unimpressive video about Karl Marx's supposed anti-Semitism. I've pulled up here just about everything I need to disprove this, as well as a previous conversation I've had with TIK about this, in which he did not respond, which is understandable. He's a very busy man. He is still wrong, though, and I'm going to show you why.
In his anti-Semitic book on the Jewish question, Karl Marx said, "What is the worldly cult of the Jew? Huckstering. What is his worldly god? Money. Money is the jealous god of Israel, besides which no other god may exist." He also says, Christ drove the Jewish money changers out of the temple, and that the money changers of our age enlisted on the side of tyranny happened again to be Jews is perhaps no more than a historic coincidence. We discern in Judaism a universal anti-social element of the present time. As soon as society succeeds in abolishing the empirical essence of Judaism, huckstering and its conditions, the Jew becomes impossible because his consciousness no longer has an object. The social emancipation of the Jew is the emancipation of society from Judaism.
This was taken from his On the Jewish Question, which is one of his first essays, actually. Here I have it pulled up. Here he's basically providing a criticism of Jewish culture. His thesis is that Jews often complain of how they are persecuted in Christian society. And, well, you can read here for yourselves his thesis, starting here. He's criticizing that Jews, that they essentially want to be raised to the level of a Christian, rather than acknowledging that they're a part of a greater system of oppression. Throughout this essay, he criticizes several issues regarding Judaism. It does come off edgy and anti-Semitic at times, but it's kind of like prototype of his historic materialism, which he would later develop in Das Kapital. So here's basically what I'm saying, the evidence for it. In this video, he's going to be cherry picking quotes from this essay, which are not points in and of themselves, but they're more poetic, theatrical type statements. I wrote this to him a while back. I quoted the premises here, the opening premises. Okay. He's going to bring this quote up a lot throughout the video. He's going to bring it up over and over again. Money is the jealous god of Israel. I'll read out what followed it, or what, it followed the quote. Judaism continues to exist not in spite of history, but owing to history. The Jew is perpetually created by civil society from its own entrails. What in itself was the basis of the Jewish religion? Practical need, egoism. The monotheism of the Jew, therefore, is in reality a polytheism of the many needs, a polytheism which makes even the laboratory an object of divine law. So, practical need, egotism is the principle of civil society. He's criticizing the materialistic nature of Jewish spiritualism. So it's later in the video, he's going to bring up that Karl Marx's criticism of Jews is a spiritual criticism. It's not. It's a material criticism of their spirituality. Their spirituality is, in effect, materialistic, is what he's saying in that particular essay. So let's continue. Let's continue.
Karl Marx also hated on individual Jews personally, such as his words against Joseph Moses Levy, the publisher of the Daily Telegraph. The Weekly Mail maintains that, although Levy really fools no one, he has changed I into Y, and it is true that among the 22,000 Levites whom Moses counted in the journey through the wilderness, there was not a single Levi who spelled his name with a Y. Just as Edmund Simon spares no effort to be regarded as belonging to the Romance people, so Levy is determined to be an Anglo-Saxon. Therefore, at least once a month he attacks the un-English policies of Mr. Disraeli. For Disraeli, the Asiatic mystery is, unlike the Telegraph, not an Anglo-Saxon by descent. But what does it profit Levy to attack Mr. Disraeli and to change I into Y when Mother Nature has inscribed his origins in the clearest possible way right in the middle of his face? The nose of the mysterious stranger of Slackenbergius, see Tristram Shandy, who had got the finest nose from the promontory of noses, was just a 9 days wonder in Strasbourg, whereas Levy's nose provides conversation throughout the year in the city of London. And Engels praises this book and this passage, as does Marxists.org, describing it as one of the most brilliant of Marx's writings. In one letter to Engels, Marx also called someone a Jewish N-word. And in his last book, Das Kapital, Volume 1, Karl Marx said,
okay. Obviously bad. Obviously bad. Obviously, by modern standards, that's not an acceptable thing to call someone, but once again, it's not really proof. Because here, this video right here is claiming that it's all building up to an eventual thesis that Marxism in itself is anti-Semitic. Him calling Lassalle, a German social democrat, a mean name with racial implications, is not in any way related to material development of society, because in Das Kapital, what he's referencing right now, a large point of it is that material conditions develop. For instance, like primitive society developed agriculture, and because of agriculture, they developed into feudal society. And feudal society eventually developed into capitalist society, liberal, sometimes not liberal society. So what he's saying is capitalism is going to continue to develop into socialism, and socialism is going to continue to develop into communism. So Marx, okay, so this theory of a non-metaphysical development, a non-static human development, has nothing to do with anti-Semitism, nothing at all. That is Marxism. That is one of the foundations of Marxism, this materialist, dialectical view of a development of both human history and the future. Nothing to do with anti-Semitism. Nothing at all. It's not a question whether socialism will develop. In Capital, he's arguing that it will develop, whether we want it to or not. It's not a question of our consent. It's a question of material development. And it has nothing to do with Judaism or the ethnicity of Ashkenazi or any other Jewish ethnicities.
Says the capitalist knows that all commodities, however scurvy they may look or however badly they may smell, are in faith and in truth money, inwardly circumcised Jews, and what is more, a wonderful means whereby out of money to make more money. There are even more anti-Semitic statements by Karl Marx besides those shown here, but I'm going to go back to the first.
The inwardly circumcised Jew, I gotta admit, I don't fully get what he's trying to say there. But the rest of the sentence, one moment. The sentence, yeah, it is. The rest of it is, it's accurate. Let's see what he says.
When money is used to buy and sell commodities, it becomes capital, and it is the person whose sole motive is the accumulation of more and more money, capital, or profit that makes someone
using the word capital wrong here, but I'm going to let him continue for now.
A capitalist. So, in this passage, Karl Marx is saying that money is capital, and that capitalism is Judaism. To Karl Marx...
No, first of all, you just made that up. He didn't say that at all anywhere. Capitalism is not a religion. Capitalism is not a religion. Judaism is a religion. Capitalism is a form of... it's an economic state of being. It's not comparable or in any way the same thing. Capital is not Jewish. That doesn't make any sense. Capital can't be Jewish. Can we just, okay. I have here my economics textbook. Pulled it up here. It's here. This is just for the cover, if you need that for whatever reason. So here, physical capital and financial capital. Marx, here, there's a distinction. This textbook has made a distinction between physical and financial capital, but in the way Marx is using it, there's no, he's using both the definitions, or both physical capital and financial capital in the same word, in the word capital. So, so capital can be both the tools, both the means of production, which you have to accumulate profit, and capital is essentially what you invest in to make more money. It differs from a commodity in the sense that a commodity is the individual product which you are creating for this for the purpose of selling and getting profit for it. So capital creates commodities. The second definition of capital here, or financial capital, okay, whatever. Oh, the funds. Okay, the funds that firms use to buy physical capital are called financial capital. So he's saying capital in that sense as well, not just in physical capital. Hope this is working. So here I have pulled up what Marx meant when he said capital. I just finished explaining that, but just in case you don't believe me, here's the Communist Manifesto. And this is, it didn't change with how he used it, or it did, but he used it in the contexts which are listed here. So it's yeah. So here he's saying what he wants to do with capital. He wants to change it into, he wants it to lose its class character, which before meant it solely belonged to the capitalists, the people who own the means of production. So let's continue.
The Jews are the capitalists. Money, in Karl Marx's eyes, is the Jewish god, and Karl Marx thinks that their sole motive is the accumulation of more money, which Karl Marx says is what a capitalist does. No. So, money, which is capital in Karl Marx's eyes, is Judaism. In other words, capitalism is Judaism, and Judaism is capitalism. That's why, when Karl Marx refers to the capitalists, he's actually referring to the Jews. We can see this in several other passages, including this one again, which at first glance doesn't really make any sense.
No, it makes full sense. Wait, no, sorry, it doesn't. Yeah, yeah. It makes full sense. It makes full sense, except for the inwardly circumcised Jews part. I don't that that's just another one of his poetic mannerisms, I assume.
The capitalist knows that all commodities, however scurvy they may look or however badly they may smell, are in faith and in truth money, inwardly circumcised Jews, and what is more...
Hang on. You have a hole. You have a hole in what you're seeing here. Okay, so if Karl Marx believed that capitalists are Jews, then why would capitalists regard commodities as Jews? Which one is the Jew? Because why would Jews regard Jews as Jews? I don't get it here. Okay, in TIK's eyes, a capitalist is a Jew. A commodity is a Jew. So why would a Jew call another Jew? Wait, hang on. Fuck, this is so fucking confusing, TIK. Jesus Christ, look what you're doing to me, man. Look, like, this makes no sense. I'm just gonna play the video. I can't do this, seventh layer of Jew calling a Jew a Jew. I can't do this.
Wonderful means whereby out of money to make more money. Think about it. Why would commodities be, quote, inwardly circumcised Jews, end quote? It doesn't really make any sense on its own. But now that we know that Karl Marx thinks capitalists are Jews and that capitalists produce...
Okay. TIK has made this easier for us. So the capitalist, or the Jew, knows that all commodities, however scurvy they may look or however badly they may smell, are in faith, in truth, money, inwardly circumcised Jews. So Karl Marx, a ethnic Jew, believes that the capitalists, or the Jews, know that all commodities are Jews. That doesn't make any sense. That still doesn't make any sense, TIK. I thought this was supposed to make sense now. It doesn't. It makes less sense than before. Before it made perfect sense, except for the poetic little part. And now it's all nonsense. Yeah, here he's just describing what a commodity is at the end of the sentence. So,
use commodities, we can piece this together to discover the true message of what Karl Marx is saying
oh,
here.
the true
As
message.
He's already admitted, when he says capitalist, he means Jews. And when he says commodities...
That doesn't make sense. The Jews know that the Jews... Hang on. The Jews know that the commodity are inwardly circumcised Jews. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't.
He actually means the products of the Jews. Or
okay. Okay. So now they're products of the Jews. No. As I previously said or demonstrated, it's not what a commodity is. That's just not. And it's honestly on you for not knowing what a commodity is. Just fucking Google it, man. Just fucking read. What can you read? Capital would be good. He quotes it. He's quoting it right now, but he hasn't read it. So maybe you should. Or hang on, something better and shorter to read, which I read. I personally haven't finished Capital. I prefer the economic and philosophic manuscripts of 1844. That is a series of notes by Karl Marx. It's very, very digestible, very concise, point by point. It tells you everything you need to know, really, in a short period of time. It's a very, very good short read. Yeah, I'd recommend reading that.
Spring of the Jews. So, if we replace the words with their actual meaning, this quote actually reads, the Jews know that their offspring are inwardly circumcised Jews.
What? What is that? That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. The Jews know that their offspring. That doesn't make sense. The original quote made more sense than that.
And now this passage makes sense.
No, it doesn't.
Karl Marx uses the word Pharisee, which means
Pharisee.
a member of an ancient Jewish sect. The Pharisee of a...
No. No, it doesn't. A Pharisee is, well, yes, in origin, a Pharisee is the group that he described it to be, but hang on, I had a definition here pulled up. Yeah, Pharisee, a member of an ancient Jewish sect, but the way they're described is, or they are characterized by a strict observance of the traditional and written law commonly held to have pretensions to superior sanctity. So this is, in a way, a synonym for conservative. That's what he really meant here, conservative. By the time, okay, Das Kapital, that was written, I believe, in the 1870s? Yeah, this is volume 1, so it's probably, yeah, somewhere 1870s. By then, conservatism, it was pretty popular, but there are still other words one would use to describe conservatism, and this is one of them. It seems to be one of them. It checks out. Like, yeah, the Pharisee is a member of an ancient Jewish sect, but it's also they're also the ones like their distinguishing characteristic is that they have a strict observance of tradition. So that's what he's addressing here. So a Pharisee of a capitalist, that would be a reactionary or a conservative, liberal conservative in some way.
Capitalist, represented by one of his servants, accompanies this action, of course, with the unctuous phrase, "That's for mother." Yet he knows well enough that the poor children must sit up and help. Karl Marx is saying here that the Pharisee of a capitalist, in other words, the Jewishness of a capitalist,
no, what Jewishness? That doesn't make sense at all. That's not, a Pharisee is, hang on. Yeah, it's a member, not a concept. Jewishness is like, that's, honestly, I don't even know. That's like some Nazi shit. Jewishness, like, TIK, where are you taking this word from? Like, I've only heard Nazis use that word. Jewishness? Like, not even Judaism. Like, Jewishness, that would mean, that would entail some sort of characteristic, some sort of characteristic of Jews that they are born with, is how I would personally interpret that. But that doesn't at all correspond with the phrase itself. Like, Pharisee to me is kind of, it's similar to the word zealot in the sense that it has a meaning, like it came from somewhere, but it's just used today or used much further on in history as just a word to carry across certain meanings. Like, for instance, the word vandal, or to vandalize, the verb, is to destroy property or to destroy or damage personal possessions. But obviously that's not, we didn't just make that up out of nowhere. Vandals were a group of people who lived in Europe at one point. I don't know what happened to them. I'm not a Vandal historian, but it seems to me like it's one of those words.
He gives work to one of his servants, and this is confirmation that Marx believes that the Jews are the capitalists, and that the capitalists...
Confirmation? We're not even remotely at confirmation. If this is confirmation for him, holy shit, you could convince this guy of anything. That's not at all confirmation. Jewishness? How did you get that? How do you, like, Google for yourselves, Pharisee. Google that word. It's not there. There's nothing to do with Jewishness. Just because you're a member of a sect of Judaism doesn't mean Pharisee means Jewishness. That's not what it means in any context. I am admittedly just using, like, the front page of Google here. Seems to be from, there's a Britannica definition, there's a Christianity.com definition, there's a Wikipedia definition. Yeah, they're all, it's all saying the same thing on every single website. LearnReligious.com, Bible study tools. Let's just keep going.
Are the Jews. He then drives this point home here. In striking contrast with the great fact that the shortening of the hours of labour of women and children in English factories was exacted from capital by the male operatives, we find in the latest reports of the Children's Employment Commission traits of the operative parents in relation to the traffic in children that are truly revolting and thoroughly like slave dealing. But the Pharisee, or Jewishness, of a capitalist, as may be seen from the same reports, denounces this brutality which he himself creates, perpetrates, and exploits, which he moreover...
Yeah, see, this makes sense. If we use Pharisee in its actual context, this makes perfect sense. You don't have to overlay it with Jewish. It makes, if anything, it makes less sense. The Jewishness of a capitalist denounces this brutality which he created. No, that doesn't make any sense. But if we use Pharisee in the context of, like, a conservative zealot or religiously conservative, if we use that meaning, then it makes a lot more sense, because these people denounce the brutality which they themselves create. Yeah.
Over-baptizes freedom of labour. Infant labour has been called into aid, even to work for their own daily bread. Without strength to endure such disproportionate toil, without instruction to guide their future life, they have been thrown into a situation physically and morally polluted. The Jewish historian has remarked upon the overthrow of Jerusalem by Titus that it was no wonder it should have been destroyed with such a signal destruction when an inhuman mother sacrificed their own offspring to satisfy their cravings of absolute hunger. So again, we have confirmation here that Karl Marx thinks that the capitalists are the Jews. And the whole of...
Hang on, I need to move thing here. Marx thinks Jews and capitalists, Jews are capitalist. Come on. Like, if he thought that, he would write that. Why would you, okay, if you're trying to spread an anti-Semitic belief in which the purpose of it is anti-Semitism, why would you not say that? He didn't say that. He gave multiple definitions for capitalism in multiple works of his, and none of them were this. Like, again, the one I pulled up in the Communist Manifesto, yeah, here it was. Yeah, it's a social status in production. It's not a religion. It doesn't have anything to do with religion. Here.
Das Kapital is anti-Semitic through and through.
He didn't read it. He didn't read the fucking book, and he's calling it anti-Semitic through and through. I highly doubt, like, you're just throwing out, like, not even paragraph-long quotes. I initially thought they were paragraph-long quotes, but no, they're like 1 or 2 sentences. Like, you're cherry-picking a sentence out of a massive fucking book, and then you're saying it's anti-Semitic through and through. It's ridiculous. And believes they would selfishly sacrifice their own children to save themselves. Jewish historian. Yeah, that does matter.
Another quote. It is not because he is a leader of industry that a man is a capitalist. On the contrary, he is a leader of industry because he is a capitalist. The leadership of industry is an attribute of capital, just as in feudal times the functions of general and judge were attributes of landed property. At first glance, this doesn't make sense.
Yes, it does. It makes perfect sense at first glance. It is not because a leader of industry that a man, it is not because he is a leader of industry that a man is a capitalist. He's not a capitalist because he's the leader of industry. He is the leader of industry because he owns the means of production, because he owns capital. Yeah, just as in feudal times, the functions of general and judge were attributes of the barons, of the lords, of the aristocracy. Like, it makes perfect sense. It makes 1,000% sense. It only doesn't make sense to you, TIK, because you're seeing this through a dogmatic lens. You already have your conclusion. You just want to support your conclusion by pretending that this doesn't make sense or not. I don't want to say you're pretending. You're not pretending. You generally think it doesn't make sense, but that's because you already have your conclusion that capitalist means Jew. It doesn't make sense if you think the capitalist if you think capitalist means Jew, or if you don't know the definition of capitalist, which you don't. You don't know the definition of capitalist. Even though it's very simple. Very simple. Anyone can know this. It's not especially complicated. It's possibly the least complicated thing about Marxism, just the term capitalist. Like, it's really easy. The one who owns the means of production. And today, or what that means for us is the person who owns the most shares of a firm. And they accumulate their money. Notice I'm not saying capital, I'm saying money, as in something separate. They accumulate their money and wealth by having workers create products, which they sell, and that raises the value of their stocks, and they get richer. The person who owns the shares of the company, they get richer off of other people's work, and they don't have to do that work. That's what a capitalist is. Of course, there are loads of there are so many criticisms criticizing that there aren't enough intermediary definitions of between a worker and a capitalist. That's not accurate because there are so many definitions both Marx and Lenin mentioned, which are intermediary between a worker, a proletariat, and a capitalist. Proletariat and bourgeoisie. There's I'm not going to list them. It doesn't matter. Yeah, that's about it.
Be a leader of an industry simply by declaring himself to be a capitalist. That doesn't make sense. If I declare myself to be a capitalist, that doesn't make me a leader of industry. So clearly, that's not what Karl Marx is saying.
No, it is. It makes full sense, as I just explained.
What Karl Marx has said in the previous quote is that capitalists are Jews. And if we apply that belief that Karl Marx has to this quote, the message becomes clear. Karl Marx is saying here that because the capitalist is Jewish, he is therefore a leader of industry.
That doesn't fucking make sense. That doesn't make sense at all. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Okay. But not all, jeez, this doesn't make any fucking sense. Not all capitalists are Jews. Not all capitalists are Jews. They're not. And that's all you need for this to fall apart. Like, I know TIK is projecting his own ideas, which he came up with, onto Karl Marx, but that's not what Karl Marx said. That's not what he wrote. That's what TIK said in this video and said to me before he made this video.
Implying that the Jewish capitalists didn't become leaders of industry by merit or anything else, but were appointed because of their Jewish faith.
No, wait, that doesn't make any sense at all. He, like, back in his 1843 writing of on the Jewish question, he said he openly demonstrated that Jews are not happy with the society in which they live because they don't, well, several reasons. They didn't have enough representation within the government. So if they didn't have the representation within the government and they were oppressed on a ethno-religious status, why on earth would they be appointed as industry leaders? That doesn't make sense. Are you implying that he hasn't read his own writing? That does not make sense at all.
Which is money or capital. And there are other clues that this is the correct way to interpret Karl Marx's anti-capitalism and anti-Semitism, which are the
money isn't necessarily capital.
Thing. In another passage in Das Kapital, Karl Marx writes, that Philistine paper, The Spectator, states that after the introduction of a sort of partnership between capitalist and workmen in the Wirework Company of Manchester, the first result was a sudden decrease in waste, the men not seeing why they should waste their own property any more than any other masters. And waste is, perhaps, next to bad debts, the greatest source of manufacturing loss.
So, here he's talking about a paper, a Philistine paper, The Spectator. Okay, keep that in mind.
Any more than any other masters, and waste is, perhaps next to bad debts, the greatest source of manufacturing loss. The same paper finds that the main defect in the Rochdale cooperative experiments is this.
So that same paper which he's criticizing finds that the greatest flaw in a cooperative experiment, I think we all know what worker cooperatives are, I believe, I hope. A worker cooperative is a firm which is collectively owned by its workers. So yeah.
They showed that associations of workmen could manage shops, mills, and almost all forms of industry with success, and they immediately improved the condition of the men. But then they did not leave a clear place for masters. Quella horror. So why would Marx feel the need to state that the Spectator is Philistine? What relevance does this have? Well, it turns out that the historical Philistines were anti-Jewish and fought against the Jews. Karl Marx himself used the word Philistine to mean ethnically anti-Jewish rather than spiritual.
Give me a moment. Where did he say Philistine? I think it was here. I had it pulled up. Okay, so okay, I'll come back to this. I was just taking a look at it for a moment. So what Philistine means is uncultured. That is what it means. Philistine, or the Philistine people, they were a people, an ancient people who invaded the territory of Israel, Palestine, whatever it was back then. They were non-Semites. They weren't Semites. They weren't of that region. So this word is again similar to that other word, Pharisee, in the sense that it's talking about a ancient people, but it has a meaning in the same way that vandal has a modern meaning. So Philistine means it means uncultured, basically. It's a bit broader than that, but generally it means uncultured. Here I have, hang on, Zoom's annoying. Here, no. Trying to figure out how to move this Zoom panel. There we are. Here we are. We'll try to move the Zoom panel maybe. I'll move the Zoom panel down here. Okay, so Oscar Wilde. The Philistine element in life is not the failure to understand art, Charming people such as fishermen, shepherds, ploughboys, peasants, and the like know nothing about art, and are the very salt of the earth. He is the Philistine who upholds and aids the heavy, crumbus blind, mechanical forces of society, and who does not recognize dynamic force when he meets it, either in a man or in a movement. So if we take the definition of Philistine, which TIK is about to say, which is non-ethnically Jewish, that's what he got from the definition, or from the word Philistine. If we take that and if we apply that here, does that make sense at all? No, you tell me. Does it make sense? No, it doesn't. Because Philistine, when people say Philistine, they mean the sets of characteristics which are associated with the historical Philistines. Similarly to what we mean when we say the word vandal. When we say that person is a vandal, we're not saying that person is a Germanic tribe, or fuck, I don't remember if they're Asiatic or Germanic. I just remember that they were in Europe. We're not saying that, right? We're not saying that a vandal is literally a vandal. We're saying that they have destroyed someone's possessions, or destroyed or damaged. That's what we're saying. But TIK thinks that we must mean vandal when we say the word vandal. We must literally mean vandal.
Anti-Jewish. So Marx is pointing out that the ethnically anti-Semitic newspaper, The Spectator, is praising the fact that the socialist experiments in Rochdale had left out the Jewish masters. Its hatred against the Jews and its praise of socialism gets rid of the Judeo-bourgeois class.
No. Where did you even get that, man? That's not at all what they were saying. Here he's saying that this newspaper, which he is criticizing, which he is calling Philistine uncultured, he's calling them uncultured. He's saying that even they admitted that cooperatives are pretty good, and the only way to criticize a cooperative is that they have no more room for the master, which in this specific case means the capitalist, the person who owns the shares of the firm, because the firm is now held collectively by the workers. Now the capitalist has no place in that relationship, and they are no longer a capitalist. They don't have control over the firm anymore. They are not Jews. Capitalists are not inherently Jews. Masters. Okay, let's let him say things. Let's let him say things before I respond.
And Karl Marx is on board with that, which is why he sarcastically says that the main defect, meaning it wasn't really a defect, was that it got rid of the Jews, and then says source of horror at the end, as in shock, horror, really. Meaning,
source of horror? Quel horreur means what horror, not source of horror. Or I guess, yeah, sure, whatever.
Of course,
I'm not here to criticize his French.
Got rid of the Jews. So I think it should be quite
Hang
clear
on,
to
what did
all
he
by
just
now
say?
that Karl Marx uses the word capitalist to hide the word Jew, as a way to hide his anti-Semitism in plain sight. His greatest book, Das Kapital, The Capital, means the money commodity in Karl Marx's own word.
What did he say just then?
To hide his anti-Semitism in plain Jews. So I think it should be quite clear to you all. Shock, horror, really, meaning, of course, socialism got rid of the Jews. So I think it should be quite clear to you all by now.
No, it didn't. A worker cooperative did not. You're so fucking insane, TIK. How do you get that? How do you get that conclusion? Like, I want to be inside your brain to understand how you think, because that's not how normal, sane people think. When someone says a worker cooperative made a firm, it made the firm succeed, but it no longer had a place for the master or the capitalist, that's not the same thing as saying, oh, the worker cooperative murdered every single Jewish person, and now there are no Jewish people. You know what, Tick? I'm a Jewish person. I'm 1/4 Jew. My grandma is 1/2 Jew. Where's my means of production, Tick? If all Jews are capitalists, why aren't I a capitalist? And why wasn't Karl Marx a capitalist? Because he renounced his spiritual Jewness? Because he renounced his religion? So many members of my family were Jewish. Many of them are still Jewish. And they don't own capital. It's really simple, Tick. I know you're ascribing these ideas to Karl Marx, but Karl Marx did not come up with these ideas. That's your idea. That is what you said. That, like, these mental fucking gymnastics from, like, you literally cherry picked some quotes in the beginning of this video, and then you based all of these conclusions off of those like 3 or 4 quotes which you provided. One of them was like, I don't know, criticizing some fucking dude who didn't have a Y in his name. I don't know. Like, you're stretching so far, man. Like, yeah, he called Lassalle like some mean names, but that doesn't mean capitalists are Jews. Like, you really just did not justify that aspect of this video. You really failed to do that. Like, you cherry picked quotes from 3 different books, and you somehow strung that into a conclusion. When he probably mentioned what a capitalist is, like, probably like a lot of times, like in the Communist Manifesto, Das Kapital, economic and philosophic manuscripts, probably others too, to be honest. I don't know if he mentioned it in Critique of the Gotha program, but if you want to know more about Lassalle, I'd suggest reading that one.
That Karl Marx uses the word capitalist to hide the word Jew as a way to hide his anti-Semitism in plain sight.
Why would he hide it? Why would he? If Marxism is an anti-Semitic worldview, I guess, let's call it a worldview. If it is anti-Semitic, why would it hide that they don't like Jews? Like, have you seen anti-Semitic communities? Have you seen what they're like? I don't think you have, Tick. Like, I think some of them may have talked to you, but I don't think you personally saw what their communities are like. I've seen them. I've seen what they're like. They're not at all, they don't hide it at all. Hang on. For public appearances, they use the brackets, right? They use the brackets around words to indicate that they are Jewish. But that is obvious. That is made by them. That is, like, it's a clear, like it's a clear, clearly connected there. Like, in terms of the words they use, there's a clear connection. Here, there is not a clear connection. Like, you're just, like, you're interpreting certain certain words that the intelligentsia uses from the perspective of Israel. Like, that's the length which you have to go to prove your dogma that these Philistines were not Semitic. So that must mean they're the perfect thing to call anti-Semites, because they invaded the territory of Israel once, the Jerusalem, I think. Yeah, they invaded them once. So let's just call all anti-Semites Philistines. And he was okay. Jeez, let's just keep doing this. I'll never get through this if I criticize everything this hard.
Das Kapital, the capital, means the money commodity in Karl Marx's own words. Karl Marx says money is the jealous god of Israel, that money is the Jewish religion, and so Das Kapital literally means the Jewish religion, or just simply the Jew. Das Kapital is the Jew. The entire thing is an anti-Semitic hit piece, disguised with euphemisms and doublespeak to hide its true meaning. The true belief...
No! No, why would he hide his true meaning? The guy lived in France. All of his fellow intellectuals were anti-Semitic. They all hated Jews. France was like a capital of anti-Semitism for like a really long time in the 19th century. There were, man, I'll post something about it. I learned about it last year in history class. There was like a bunch of anti-Semitic groups within France. They were very popular at the time. So if Marx was an anti-Semite, you could have just joined them. Why would he need to create Marxism? He could create Marxism, but why wouldn't he ally himself with anti-Semites? Why wouldn't he do that? It just doesn't make sense at all to me.
Believers, the anti-Semites, the Marxists, of course, know what their real socialism is. At its core, it's
the anti-Semites, the Marxists. I was literally born in Israel. This is a shirt from my uncle who lives in Israel. Like this is like, man, I need a break. I'm gonna speedrun the rest of this video because this is really boring me at this point. I just want to get this over with fast. So I don't have to deal with people believing in this bullshit.
The belief of anti-capitalism is that the capitalists are stealing wealth off the workers. This is untrue because value is subjective, not based on labor, but to a racist...
Okay, so capitalists aren't stealing the value workers create because value is subjective? Are you fucking kidding me? Okay, that's not an argument. That's not an argument. Read Marx. That's all I have to say.
It is true because a racist who isn't a money changer and therefore has little idea about money believes that the workers, people who are not Jews, put the value of their labor into the products that they produce. And they believe that the Jews don't work and just make money from the money they already have. They're the money changers. So the racist believes that the Jewish money changers are stealing off everyone else in society. This is factually untrue, but hopefully you can see now how this fundamental belief is at the core of socialist ideology.
I'll let him finish.
Capitalism comes from anti-Semitism. The two concepts are entwined and are one and the same.
No, they aren't. You failed to demonstrate that. You didn't demonstrate that. You just fucking pulled up like 3 or 4 quotes which have nothing to do with this, and you just made this correlation. You just fucking pull it out of your ass. It doesn't make sense at all. It doesn't make sense. You have not demonstrated this, TIK. You have not demonstrated. Do not pretend like you have demonstrated that. That is not evidence for anything. You would fail. You would fail in any university class, even in an entry university class. You'd fucking fail if you tried to pull that shit and like hand it in as an assignment. That just does not work. It doesn't work. You failed to demonstrate it. Jesus, man. Previously, I've mentioned that you just completely neglect the utopian socialists in your definitions of socialism. Hang on, you've made like a dozen definitions of socialism by now. At one point it was violence, or just like the use of violence to like steal property or like win in competition. That was one of your definitions, which you kind of played along like a long time ago. It was like a year ago or so. Then there was what else did you call socialism? Oh, right, you called socialism the state control of the means of production, and now socialism is anti-Semitism. Which one is it? Is it, or maybe it's all three? Maybe it's all three. You know, I'll give you credit. Maybe it's all three for you. Not for me, it isn't. For socialists, it's not that. But for you, supposed anti-socialist, apparently that's what you're against. I'm against that too. I'm against it too. So we're both, I suppose, anti-socialists, except I'm a Marxist. But you know, to each his own. You know, let's keep going.
And when Karl Marx says the word bourgeoisie, he actually means two things. First, he means the Jews, which includes ethnic Jews, but he also means the capitalists, non-ethnic Jews, whom he says are practicing the Jewish faith of capitalism. Proof for this will be shown shortly, but I need to explain the historical context first. In the Dark Ages, the Christian Pope banned usury, which is the lending of money and charging interest.
I need to see that again.
So Christian, one and the same. And when Karl Marx says the word bourgeoisie, he actually means two things. First, he means the Jews, which includes ethnic Jews, but he also means the capitalists, non-ethnic Jews, whom he says are practicing the Jewish.
What? You just distinguished that Jews and capitalists are two distinct categories. Okay, wait. So capitalists are spiritual Jews. Jews are ethnic Jews? Is that what you're saying? Oh my lord.
Jewish faith of capitalism. Proof for this will be shown shortly. I need to explain the historical context first. In the Dark Ages,
no.
the
We're not
Christian
watching this
Pope
part. We're
banned
not watching
use
this part.
old-fashioned.
This is okay. I'll summarize what he said here. Jews were persecuted in Europe. That's what he said there. Okay.
Anti-Semitism forced the Jews to become.
Watch his video. Watch his video. This isn't a substitute for his video. Watch his video.
Readiness to believe
Edward massacred Jews, and that's supposed to mean that Marxists are anti-Semitic. That aristocracy, European aristocracy, killed Jews, and that's why we're anti-Semitic. Okay.
What happened is anti-Semitic and is a denial of historic anti-Semitism.
Okay. Further explanation. Random dude on the internet denied that Jews were forced into the position of proprietorship because they were excluded from towns, and that way they were forced to, or sorry, not all towns, but they were excluded from big cities, so they were forced to create enterprises, communities surrounding enterprise in rural districts and villages and towns, stuff like that. So yeah, they had a natural inclination to become enterprise owners. Again, not all of them were capitalists. Just because you're a proprietor, it usually means you're petty bourgeoisie. It doesn't usually mean like you own. We already covered this. This is boring. Let's move on.
Anyway, because of historic anti-Semitism, Karl Marx had good reason to believe that a significant portion of the bourgeoisie were the Jews. We can see this here. The essential conditions for the existence and for the sway of the bourgeois class is the formation and augmentation of capital. If capital is money, and money is the jealous god of Israel.
Mental gymnastics. Okay, let's see what the screen actually says. The essential conditions for the existence and for the sway of the bourgeois class is the formation and augmentation of capital. Okay, so capital changes and it grows, and the bourgeois class grows, changes and grows. And now TIK is saying money is a random excerpt from a poetic quote, which I talked about previously. Capital is Jews, which is not true. Then capitalism is Judaism, which is batshit insanity. Like beyond batshit insanity, but let's just keep playing because fuck me, I guess.
Which Karl Marx has said, then the bourgeoisie who accumulate capital are Jews, at least in faith. So this passage confirms that the bourgeoisie are, in faith at least, Jewish. But this next paragraph is...
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. That's not what it says. It says the essential conditions for the existence and for the sway of the class of capital owners is the formation and the change of capital. Capital isn't Jews. If you just substitute Jews for what... Oh, of course this works for you, TIK, because you just changed what words mean. Bourgeois class doesn't mean Jews. Capital doesn't mean Jews. Fuck off. Asshole, man.
Striking. While this true socialism thus served the government as a weapon for fighting the German bourgeoisie, it at the same time...
Now he's switched. Hang on. That was a previous quote from what? What was that a quote from? Okay, no, we're still on the Communist Manifesto.
See who accumulate capital.
No. Okay, he's referencing the Communist Manifesto and the Jewish question here. Okay, just let it go.
Are Jews, at least in faith. So this passage confirms that the bourgeoisie are, in faith at least, Jewish. But this next paragraph is striking. While this true socialism thus served the government as a weapon for fighting the German bourgeoisie, it at the same time directly represented a reactionary interest, the interest of German Philistines.
Yeah, the uncultured Germans, the ones that don't engage in modern intellectual discourse. That's, I suppose, what he meant there. Again, I pulled it up briefly in the Communist Manifesto. I'm not going to pull it up again. You can read it through if you wish. but I'm just really curious to see what he's going to get from this.
Philistines. Okay, there's that word again, Philistine. As explained earlier, Karl Marx uses this to mean ethnic anti-Semites. In other words, racist anti-Semites, rather than spiritual anti-Semites like Karl Marx. So, Karl Marx says here that while the German government used a fake socialism to fight the German Jewish bourgeoisie, at the same time, all this did was benefit the German racist anti-Semites.
Holy fuck. This is so incoherent.
Requires a bit of context, so let me just explain. For starters, just because they were anti-Semites doesn't mean that they were socialists in the way that Karl Marx thinks socialism is. That's why he puts the true in quotes, implying that this German version of socialism is fake socialism. He therefore means that the German ethnic anti-Semites, basically proto-Nazis,
honestly, proto-Nazis this is way too early for proto-Nazis. Let's look here. Where was it here? Or perhaps it was here. Yeah, it was here. So somewhere down here. Oh no, let's go here. Yeah. Conservative or bourgeois, critical. Perhaps it was up here. Yeah, German or true socialism. Okay, let's read this together. Let's try to figure out what the fuck he's talking about. The socialist and communist literature of France, the literature that originated under the pressure of a bourgeoisie in power, and that was the expressions of the struggle against this power, was introduced into Germany at a time when the bourgeoisie in that country had just begun its contest with feudal absolutism. German philosophers, would-be philosophers, and beaux esprits, men of letters, eagerly seized on this literature, only forgetting that when these writings immigrated from France into Germany, French social conditions had not immigrated along with them in contact with German social conditions. This French literature lost all of its immediate practical significance and assumed a purely literary aspect. Thus, to the German philosophers of the 18th century, the demands of the French Revolution were nothing more than the demands of practical reason, blah, 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 blah. I'm just gonna skim it because this is a lot of stuff that doesn't have anything to do with anything. Marx versus, for instance, French criticism and economic functions of money. The introduction of these philosophical phrases at the back of the French historical criticisms, they dubbed philosophy of action true socialism, German science of socialism, philosophical foundation of socialism, and so on. The French socialist and communist literature was thus completely emasculated, and since it ceased in the hands of the German to express the struggle of one class with the other, he felt consciousness having overcome French one-sidedness and of representing not true requirements, but the requirements of truth, not the interests of the proletariat, but the interests of human nature, of man in general, who belongs to no class, has no reality, who exists only in the misty realm of philosophical fantasy. Okay, so he's criticizing them because well, I just said, I'm not going to repeat myself. This German socialism, which took its schoolboy task so seriously and solemnly, and extolled its poor stock and trade in such a mountebank fashion, meanwhile gradually lost its pedantic innocence. The fight of the Germans, and especially the Prussian bourgeoisie, against feudal aristocracy and absolute monarchy, in other words, the liberal movement, became more earnest. By this, the long-wished for the opportunity was offered to true socialism of confronting the political movement with the socialist demands, of hurling the traditional anathemas against liberalism, against representative government, against bourgeois competition, bourgeois freedom of the press, bourgeois legislation, bourgeois liberty and equality, and of teaching to the masses that they had nothing to gain and everything to lose by this bourgeois movement. German socialism forgot in the nick of time that the French criticism, whose silly echo it was, presupposed the existence of modern bourgeois society with its corresponding economic conditions of existence, and the political constitution adapted hitherto, the very things those attainment was the object of the pending struggle in Germany. To the absolute governments with their following of partisans professors, country squires, and officials, it served as a welcome scarecrow against threatening bourgeoisie. It was a sweet finish after the bitter pills of flogging and bullets, which these same governments just at that time dosed the German working class risings. Okay. While this true socialism thus served the government as a weapon for fighting the German bourgeoisie, it at the same time directly represented a reactionary interest, the interest of German Philistines. In Germany, the petty bourgeois class, a relic of the 16th century, and since then constantly cropping up against the various forms, is the real social basis of the existing state of things. To preserve this class, the industrial and political supremacy of the bourgeoisie threatens it with certain destruction. On one hand, from the concentration of capital. On the other, from the rise of revolutionary proletariat. True socialism appeared to kill these two birds in one stone. It spread like an epidemic. And then he does some poetic verses. Okay, so he's criticizing it for being petty bourgeoisie. Okay, he's criticizing it for chauvinism, basically, down here. It proclaimed the German nation. I'll highlight it. Fuck, here it is. To be the model nation. So he's criticizing a certain national chauvinism of German socialist parties. And he's criticizing several other tendencies which have nothing to do with Judaism, to be honest, or National Socialism. He's not talking about National Socialists or Spengler Socialists. He's talking about Social Democrats, it seems. Perhaps, it could be that he meant Prussian socialism as well. He could have meant that. And the German petty Philistine to be the typical man. To every villainous meanness of this model man, it gave a hidden, higher socialistic interpretation, the exact contrary of its real character. Opposing the brutal, destructive tendency of communism and of proclaiming its supreme and impartial contempt of all class struggles. There it is. There's his criticism. It's contemptful of class struggle. With very few exceptions, the so-called socialist and communist publications that now, in the year 1847, circulate in Germany belong to the domain of this foul and enervating literature. Well, there we go. Well, it's quite self-explanatory. It's not what TIK is saying. So I don't think I could have been any more thorough. Like, I literally just read what he meant.
Real socialists and are a reactionary element and are against socialism. He says that while these so-called German socialists did fight against some of the bourgeoisie, the Jews, they were doing so for their own bourgeois interests only. In other words, they were still Jews in faith because they were capitalists in hiding. So Marx is saying that German anti-Semite socialism...
Okay, why... My question is why he takes like one quote from like On the Jewish Question to be like, okay, so money is the jealous god of Israel, so Judaism is capitalism? That doesn't really, that doesn't hold up, man. It just doesn't. I think you already get it. I'm going to breeze through this.
Socialists or proto-Nazis are fake socialists. He's saying that they're bourgeoisie in disguise, even if they fight ethnic Jews, which is what socialism does.
Although some of them are.
This is confirmed in this next quote. And on its part, German socialism recognized more and more its own calling as the bombastic representative of the petty bourgeois Philistine. It proclaimed the German nation to be the model nation and the German petty Philistine to be the typical man. To every villainous meanness of this model man, it gave a hidden, higher socialistic interpretation, the exact contrary of its real character. So yes, Karl Marx is rejecting the old German anti-Semitic fake socialism because, even though they were anti-Jewish, they were ultimately bourgeois in faith themselves.
They were not anti-Jewish.
This, of course, confirms Karl Marx's hatred of the Jews and of the Jewish faith.
No, it doesn't! Where is the Jew?
It's the same as that of all other
The Jew is not in the conversation. It's not even near the conversation. Come on, man.
parties, formation of the proletariat into a class, overthrow of the bourgeois supremacy, conquest of political power by the proletariat. Yes, Karl Marx wants to overthrow the bourgeoisie. He wants to overthrow the Jews. And he says that this is what all other proletarian parties are aiming for. All socialism is anti-Semitism. In this next quote, he says he also wants to end what he calls bourgeois property, Jewish property, and he wants to abolish the Jewish family. Abolition, Aufhebung of the family, even the most radical flare-up of this infamous proposal.
Okay, he's just gonna, like, from now on, he's just gonna plug in his bullshit, like the bullshit he came up with. Oh, very good slide that I stopped on. So here he's trying to pretend that just because Karl Marx mentioned centralization of like just having like one national bank in the Communist Manifesto, which was a pamphlet for peasants to get them to rise up in a revolution. He's just saying just because he brought up this direct policy there means that's every stage of development that's ever going to happen. Again, it's a metaphysical worldview. Like, he thinks just because you write something should happen at one point, he thinks that's all it's going to be ever. Here Marx is describing what should happen in the dictatorship of the proletariat, which is a transition state which was meant to transition away from capitalism into socialism, which again, that's a different conversation. I don't want to have this conversation right now. It develops and eventually it reaches communism. That's the whole idea. Here he complains about. I'm just gonna let him complain because he's an idiot. Let him say what he means.
Of the state by means of a national bank with state capital and an exclusive monopoly. Gee, I always thought that Marxists hated monopolies. That's what they always claim. And yet, here's their master calling for monopolies. And I thought that they didn't want state capitalism. And yet, their god, Karl Marx, is calling for state capitalism. Gee, that's strange, isn't it? It's almost like these morons haven't even read Karl Marx or
I'm not gonna say anything. I'm not gonna say anything. Yeah, it's almost like someone is a moron and someone hasn't read Karl Marx. I'm not gonna say who. But one of us here has not read Marx.
Just lying. Also, Marxists will claim that they're against money. Okay then, what's the purpose of a state central bank if money has been abolished? Oh, that's right, because money won't be abolished under Marxist rule.
You can't fucking abolish money like right after you take power. Imagine being just so brain dead that you think workers can take power and then just abolish money, just fucking get rid of it, and then the whole world is still functioning in capitalism, but this one territory in which workers have power, they get to be as communist as they want to. They don't have to trade for goods. They have everything they could possibly need in their one territory. No, that's not how development works. Some nations are not as developed as others, and they don't produce everything. That's why you can't just go from capitalism to socialism. You need an intermediary period. You need a transition state, and you need to operate under the laws which hold up capitalism.
Only the so-called Jewish practice of buying things to sell them on for profit will be abolished.
That's not a Jewish practice. He never called it that, man. Why do you keep saying that?
Bank is there to destroy the supposedly Jewish practice of accumulating money. And this is the whole point of socialism.
No.
All socialism is anti-capitalism, and all socialism is therefore, at its heart, anti-Semitism. No wonder Goebbels declared 80 years later that all socialism is anti-Semitism.
Whatever,
Karl Marx
dude.
and Hitler both agree on the same essential principle of
Karl Marx and Hitler agreed on the same. No, they didn't. They didn't agree on anything. Hitler fucking hated Karl Marx. Holy shit, Karl Marx. Calling someone like Karl Marx was an insult in Germany. Like, do you really think that Hitler hated Marx because he wasn't... Okay, wait. Let's logically appropriate what you have come up with into reality. Let's pretend what you're saying is real. Okay, so then Hitler would only hate Marx because Marx is an ethnic Jew rather than a spiritual Jew. So, in your mind, they are both. Hitler hates ethnic Jews. Uh, Marx apparently hates spiritual Jews, and they like combine into like one socialist force. When there are so many more differences between them, they don't have anything to do with each other, to be honest. Um, if Hitler only hated Marx because he was an ethnic Jew rather than a spiritual Jew, then he would hate a lot more people before he hated Marx. But Marx was such an important he was such an important part of the Nazi ideology that he became essentially the manifestation of Jewry. Uh, because, well, I don't have to explain the TIK, but um, but Hitler believed there was a connection between ethnic Jewry and spiritual Jewry and Jewish domination over the world. But he said that directly. Marx never talks about this. You're just interpreting Marx this way because of the lens you're putting on right now, because you found a couple quotes in a fucking series of notes published in 1844, which was written in 43. You found some notes, and now you like think you've like rediscovered the world. Like, like TIK, this is so naive of you. Like several at one point, probably like the population of China, the population of the USSR, so many millions upon millions, and even billions of people, they all studied Marx, and you think you're smarter than all of them. You think you're smarter than all of them. They didn't have anything to do with anti-Semitism. Was there occasionally anti-Semitism in socialist countries? Sometimes, but it was always fought against by the state. Like, you should hear Lenin on anti-Semitism. Like, everyone watching this should Google that video, Lenin on anti-Semitism speech. And you'll know what Lenin thought about anti-Semitism. It's really simple. They are anti-Semitic. Some of them were Semitic, like Marx and Trotsky. A bunch of others probably too. Whatever.
Socialisms, that capitalism and Jewishness are entwined. They believed that capitalism was bad because it was Jewish, and believed that Jewishness was bad because it was capitalist. Money was associated with Jewishness, and the solution that Karl Marx and Hitler came up with to defeat Judeo-capitalism was a centrally planned economy where money, commodities, and therefore Jewishness had...
Hey, hang on. No. Socialist planning is not what Hitler created. That was not a planned economy. That was firstly, it was like a vampire economy. It was just Hitler robbing the public sector of funds and transferring money to his cronies that got him into power in the first place, disabling or repealing antitrust laws. Like, this isn't economic planning. This is liberalization. This is creating more market competition, and then his cronies win that competition because they have a cartel. What it's called? They have an alliance between several corporations which controls the power in Germany, and they're all allied to the Nazi Party because the Nazi Party got them that power. So it's really rather different than councils, which are local to a population, planning their economy. Or, of course, in the USSR, for instance, it worked out differently. The state did most of the planning. And the Soviets, the local councils, they had very little to do with it, but they are intrinsic to the idea of planning. Planning must be democratic. If it's not democratic, then it fails. then something like the Holodomor happens. When it's not democratically agreed upon, it fails. When it is democratically agreed upon, it works. So that's really that.
No place. But by doing this, by removing money and centrally planning the economy, you also remove the Jews from society. Karl Marx, just like Hitler, was calling for the removal of the Jews from society. The social emancipation of the Jew is the emancipation of society from Judaism.
I don't think he read that quote. I don't think he read that quote at all. Social emancipation of the Jew is the emancipation of society from Judaism. So what he's saying is he had a materialist stance. So he's saying that Jews would be better off without Judaism. I'm getting really tired. I just want to get through this.
The way they differed, though, change. Marx believed, just like Mussolini, that Jews could give up their faith in Judeo-capitalism and convert to a new faith, fascism or socialism.
Fascism or socialism? Dude, you're such a moron. You are an unimaginable moron, dude. I don't know how I'm supposed to explain to you. I don't know how I'm supposed to explain to you that fascism, like, just read Doctrine of Fascism, read economic and philosophic manuscripts. Like, just read the two, and then come back to me and tell me they're the fucking same. They're not the same.
Or, like the bourgeoisie, on which they were seen as the epitome, had an option. They could convert. Mussolini said that for most Jews, perhaps a generation would suffice for them to become proper Italians. Now, some have argued that Karl Marx was Jewish, and thus this proves that he cannot be anti-Semitic. This argument falls flat on its face when the facts are known. Karl Marx never practiced Judaism himself. Okay. His grandfather had been the rabbi of Nijmegen, but his father had turned against the faith, and Karl Marx inherited his spiritual anti-Semitism from...
You're still accusing him of wanting to murder all Jews, which entails ethnic Jews. Or maybe you're not saying ethnic Jews, maybe you're saying spiritual Jews, but that's still not the case, because Marxists never did that at all.
From his father. If you're a racist, and just like Hitler, believe that human subspecies exist, even though science says we all come from the same tribes in Africa roughly 60,000 years ago, which on evolutionary terms isn't long enough to create separate and distinct races, and so the belief in race is just that, a cultish belief. If you are a racist and believe in human races, then you may argue that Karl Marx was ethnically Jewish.
It's not a cultish belief. I've seen some scientists say that race is like a genotypic variable. It's not. It has nothing to do with phenotypic variables, but yeah, I've seen some people that it has. Some people say that it has something to do with genes, but like again, it may not be true, because I heard that from a libertarian actually. So I don't fully trust it. But I don't know much about genes or the study of genes, so I can't say for certain. I've seen a lot of leftists say that race isn't real, so honestly, that's not my field of expertise. It could be either or, I don't know.
Again, race doesn't exist, so this argument doesn't work. But even if we accept the religious like anti-Semitic, not necessarily racially anti-Semitic like Hitler was. Although Karl Marx did put racism into his spiritual anti-Semitism, it just wasn't on the same level as Hitler. Also, Karl Marx was a member of the bourgeoisie, and was also against the bourgeoisie. So he's Jewish and bourgeois, and anti-Jewish and anti-bourgeois at the same time.
Why do you... Fuck you, man.
Just like many things in Karl Marx's life and many things he said, it seems like a contradiction to people who are logically minded. But Karl Marx rejected logic. He believed in Hegel, who said everything is inherently contradictory, which is why Karl Marx said, what constitutes dialectical movement is the coexistence of two contradictory sides, their conflict and their fusion into a new category, where I would say that a contradiction means...
Let's see what he's saying. The coexistence of a thesis and an antithesis, which fight it out and then produce a synthesis. This does not mean, okay, that means what I just said, okay? What it doesn't mean is that two things are true simultaneously. Simultaneously, two things which contradict each other are true. That's not what he's saying. That's not what he's saying. Like, if you actually read what you're putting on the screen, then you would know. TIK. Man, you're dumb.
Means that you have a flaw in your argument, or that something is wrong somewhere. For example, something cannot be true, but also be false at the same time. Karl Marx, on the
Thank you, TIK, but that's not what Karl Marx said.
other hand, embraced contradictions. That's why I would argue that nothing he wrote was correct.
That's not what embracing contradictions means, man. Holy crap.
Because everything he wrote was either contradicted by something else he wrote, or can be demonstratingly proven false through evidence and logical interpretation.
You're such a, logic, such a big brain, such a massive, big brain, TIK with the big brain, TIK. God damn it, TIK, you're fucking killing me, dude.
But the point is, you cannot argue that Karl Marx was ethnically Jewish and therefore couldn't hate Jews, because that would be a contradiction, because Karl Marx embraced contradictions. So the fact that he was supposedly ethnically Jewish wouldn't be a problem for him. Also, by calling him Jewish, you're arguing that he was a capitalist by Karl Marx's own reasoning. So unless you think Karl Marx...
No, he was not a capitalist. He did not own means of production. He didn't own them. He was not a capitalist.
Was a capitalist, you are wrong. And I can't wait for the socialists to cry out that Karl Marx was not a real socialist. Please, please make it be so. However, I have seen Marxist articles trying to deny the claim that Karl Marx was anti-Semitic, basically by misrepresenting the argument that he was, stating that everyone at the time was racist, so it would be unfair to call Karl Marx a racist, which is an admission that he was a racist, hiding some of the sources like Marxism.org, not publishing Karl Marx's The Russian Loan, for example, claiming that his anti-Semitism was trying to help the Jews somehow, and by accusing those of pointing out Karl Marx's anti-Semitism of being anti-Semites themselves. Obviously, none of these arguments work, or are real arguments, and I'm not going to go through them all because there's no point and they don't address the issue.
Yeah, there's
I
no
will
point.
guard myself from the usual accusations of me somehow being a fascist or a Nazi or a racist or whatever. Well, for starters, I don't believe in human racism.
Okay, that's it. That's it. He's done. He's done. Now he's just going to say that he's not a Nazi or a fascist, which I believe, but he also, in other videos unrelated to this, he has said that he wants to transcend politics, which in itself is a fascist idea, written in the doctrine of fascism, literally. Mussolini had this idea of an anti-party, a party which would destroy domestic politics and class conflict. And politics, as we know, is a manifestation of both class conflict and a conflict of interests between groups who either one of them wins or the other one does. It's and he wants to. Yeah, he said this was in one of his previous videos. He said that he wants to transcend politics and focus on economic growth. Where the fuck that means? Child slavery, probably. Whatever, man. I'm done with this. This is exhausting.